The night was colder than usual. The small wooden house creaked as the wind pushed against its fragile walls. Inside, little Emily, barely 8 years old, sat on the floor with her younger brother, Daniel, resting against her chest. His forehead burned with fever, his breathing shallow, his lips dry and trembling. Emily pressed a damp cloth against his skin, but it had already lost its coolness. She whispered softly, "Hold on, Danny. I'll find medicine. I promise." The truth was, they had nothing left. No coins, no food, not even clean water. Their mother had abandoned them weeks ago, leaving them with a stepmother whose cruelty had no limits. The woman never cared for Daniel's illness. She laughed whenever Emily begged for help, mocking her with venomous words. "Do I look like a charity? If your brother is weak, let him die. It's not my problem." But that night, Emily couldn't wait anymore. Daniel's condition was worsening. The heat of his fever was frightening, and his frail body shook with chills. Emily's small hands trembled as she covered him with a thin blanket. Then she stood, determination flashing in her eyes. She couldn't let him slip away. She put on her worn-out shoes, wrapped a scarf around Daniel's little shoulders, and with all her strength, carried him outside. The village was quiet, most windows already dark. But Emily didn't care about the time. She ran through the dirt road, knocking on every door, shouting for help. "Please! My brother is sick. He needs medicine. Please, someone help us." At the first house, an old woman cracked the door open, peeking out with suspicion. When she saw Emily holding Daniel, she shook her head. "I have nothing for you. Don't bring trouble to my door." The door slammed shut. Emily ran to the next house, her voice breaking. "Please, fever medicine, anything." A man leaned out of the window, his face cold. "Go away, girl. Everyone knows your family is cursed. That boy won't last the night. Don't waste our time." Emily's heart shattered, but she pressed forward. House after house, insult after insult. Some laughed, some spat at her feet, some ignored her completely. Daniel whimpered softly in her arms, his little voice calling her name. "My," before fading again into weakness. Tears blurred her vision, but she wiped them quickly. She couldn't stop now. If she gave up, Daniel's life would be lost forever. At the edge of the village, she reached the bakery. The warm smell of bread drifted through the air, mocking her empty stomach. The baker's wife stepped outside, annoyed. "What is it now, child?" Emily knelt, desperation in every word. "Please, just a pill, a drop of syrup, anything to bring the fever down. I'll work, I'll clean your floors, I'll..." The woman crossed her arms, smirking cruelly. "Work? You're nothing but a beggar's child. Go away before I call someone to drag you off." Laughter came from the people behind her. A group of neighbors had gathered, watching Emily's humiliation as if it were entertainment. Their whispers cut through her heart. Look at her, pretending to be noble. She should have learned her place. That boy is a burden. Better if he dies. Emily hugged Daniel tighter, shielding his ears from their cruelty. Her tears soaked his hair as she whispered, "Don't listen, Danny. Please don't listen." But inside, her soul screamed, "Why? Why won't anyone help us?" The night deepened, stars hidden behind thick clouds. Emily stumbled toward the town square, where a single lamppost flickered weakly. She sank to her knees, rocking Daniel in her arms. His feverish skin felt hotter than ever. She cried out to the empty sky, "Someone, please! Please save him!" For a moment, silence was her only answer. Then, the echo of footsteps broke the stillness. Heavy, deliberate, and growing closer. Emily lifted her head, blinking through tears. From the shadows of the square emerged a tall figure in a dark coat. His posture was firm, his expression unreadable, but his eyes locked onto the sight of a desperate girl cradling her dying brother. Emily's heart pounded. She didn't know who he was, but something in the way he stopped, something in the silence that followed, felt different. The cruelty she had faced all night was gone from his gaze. Instead, there was something else, shock, anger, and maybe, just maybe, hope. She clutched Daniel tighter and whispered, "Please, sir, he's all I have." The man knelt slowly, his expensive shoes pressing into the dirt. His deep voice broke the silence. "Who did this to you? And if your heart is racing at this moment, if you felt Emily's pain and Daniel's suffering, don't stay silent. Hit the like button, share the story, and subscribe. Because the more voices join us here, the louder stories like this will echo across the world." Emily stared at the man, her lips trembling. His presence was overwhelming. His dark coat looked out of place in the poor village, his polished shoes shining even in the dim light of the square. He didn't belong here. That was clear. Yet here he was, kneeling before a ragged little girl holding her feverish brother. Her voice cracked. "Everyone. They all turned us away. They laughed at me. They said he wasn't worth saving." The words spilled out, each one heavier than the last, until Emily choked on her own tears. The man's jaw tightened. His eyes burned with restrained fury as he looked down at Daniel's fragile body. He touched the boy's forehead gently with the back of his hand. Heat radiated from him like fire. "He's burning," the man muttered under his breath, his voice low but charged with urgency. Emily nodded desperately. "Please. I tried every house. No one would give me medicine. They only insulted me." The man rose to his full height, towering over her, his silhouette cutting against the lamplight. Emily instinctively held Daniel tighter, unsure if this stranger would also push her away. But then he said something that made her heart skip. "Stand up, child. I'm taking you with me." Emily blinked in disbelief. "With you?" "Yes. Now." His tone left no room for doubt. "If you want your brother to live, trust me." Emily hesitated for only a second. Then, with all the courage left in her, she stood. Her arms ached from carrying Daniel, but the man reached out and gently took the boy into his own arms. Emily gasped. This stranger held her brother as if he were precious, not a burden. "Follow me," he ordered. They walked swiftly through the silent streets. Emily struggled to keep up, her legs sore and weak, but she didn't dare fall behind. Something about the way he carried Daniel, careful, protective, ignited a spark of hope inside her. They stopped at a black car parked at the edge of the square. Emily had never seen a car so shiny, so foreign to their dusty roads. The man opened the back door with one hand, still cradling Daniel with the other. He laid the boy gently on the seat, then turned to Emily. "Get in." Emily's breath caught. Her stepmother had always told her that strangers were dangerous, that no one would ever help her without wanting something in return. But this man's eyes, they weren't like the others. They were filled with fury, yes, but not at her. His anger was aimed at those who had hurt her, those who had refused to help. She climbed in without another word. The car roared to life, startling her. The village blurred past as they drove away, the wind whistling through the cracks in the old houses. Emily clutched her brother's hand, whispering to him, "Hold on, Danny. Please hold on." The man kept his eyes fixed on the road, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. Emily dared to ask, her voice small, "Sir, who are you?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then finally he said, "Someone who's seen enough cruelty in this world. Someone who won't let it happen again." His words were strange, but Emily clung to them like a lifeline. They arrived at a grand house on the outskirts of town. The gates opened automatically, and the car rolled up a stone path lined with glowing lights. Emily's eyes widened. She had never imagined such a place existed. It was as if they had entered another world entirely. The man parked and stepped out quickly. He opened the back door, lifting Daniel again with ease. Inside, "Hurry." Emily followed him into the house. The warmth hit her instantly. Soft golden light, polished wood, the smell of herbs and clean linen. Two servants rushed forward at the sight of the man carrying the boy. "Prepare the guest room. Call Dr. Hargrove immediately," the man ordered, his voice sharp with authority. "Yes, sir," they replied, moving quickly. Emily stood frozen, unsure if she belonged in such a place. Her torn shoes left marks on the polished floor. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling smaller than ever. The man noticed and turned to her. His expression softened for the first time. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "No one will mock you again. Not under my roof." Her lips trembled. Why are you helping us?" He looked at her, his eyes dark but sincere. "Because children should never have to beg for mercy. And because I cannot stand by and watch another life stolen by neglect." The doctor arrived minutes later, carrying a leather bag. He hurried upstairs, the man following with Daniel in his arms. Emily trailed close behind, fear gnawing at her. What if it was too late? What if Daniel couldn't be saved even now? They laid Daniel on a wide, soft bed. The doctor worked quickly, checking his pulse, examining his breathing, and pulling out vials of medicine. Emily stood at the edge, wringing her hands, whispering prayers under her breath. The man remained by the bedside, his eyes fixed on the boy's fragile form. His fists clenched every time Daniel coughed or whimpered. Emily saw it. This stranger was not indifferent. He was angry. Angry that a child had been left to suffer. Angry that no one had lifted a hand to help. Finally, the doctor injected something into Daniel's arm. "This will bring the fever down," he assured softly. "But he needs rest, warmth, and proper care." Emily exhaled shakily, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered, "Thank you, thank you." The man didn't move. He stood like a guardian at the boy's side, his presence filling the room with a strange sense of safety. For the first time in days, Emily felt the crushing weight on her chest lift, just a little. She wasn't alone anymore. And she didn't yet know that this man's arrival was only the beginning. The room had grown quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall and Daniel's steadier breathing. The fever had begun to retreat. Beads of sweat collected along his hairline, and his cheeks, once flushed scarlet, were now a gentler pink. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, afraid to blink, as if closing her eyes might undo the fragile miracle happening in front of her. The man stood nearby, a shadow of vigilance. He had taken off his coat. Under the lamplight his white shirt looked out of place in a home that felt more like a sanctuary than a house. "You should drink something warm," he said at last, his voice lower, careful, as if words might startle the moment. "There's broth in the kitchen. I'll have someone bring it." Emily nodded, but didn't move. Her small fingers traced the blanket around Daniel's shoulder. "If I go, and he needs me..." She couldn't finish. The fear that had followed her through the night still held tight to her ribs. "I'll stay with him," the man replied. "I give you my word." There was something about the way he said word that made it feel unbreakable. Emily rose hesitantly and went to the adjoining bathroom to wash her face. Cold water bit her skin awake. In the mirror she barely recognized herself. Soot-smudged cheeks, red-rimmed eyes, hair tangled by wind and worry. She took a long breath, then another, and when she stepped back into the room she found the man where he'd promised to be, by Daniel's side. A maid arrived with a tray, broth, bread, a porcelain cup of tea that smelled faintly of mint. Emily whispered a thank you and sipped. Warmth spread through her chest, a small island of comfort in an ocean of fear. The man watched Daniel for a moment longer, then turned to Emily. "What is your name?" "Emily," she said softly. "And he's Daniel." He nodded. "I'm..." He paused as if choosing a truth from a shelf of secrets. "My name is Adrian Cole." The name meant nothing to Emily, but it carried weight when he said it, like the name of a person who could make decisions, who could move walls and open doors. She tucked it away in her mind, unsure why it felt important. "Emily," he continued, "tell me about your mother." Her throat tightened. She left. Weeks ago. She said she'd come back with medicine and work and food, but she never did. Emily's eyes drifted to Daniel. She used to hum to him when he was little. A lullaby. She said someone taught her when she was happy. The words sounded foreign. Did she ever mention family? A friend? Anyone I could contact? Emily shook her head, then frowned as a memory surfaced. "She had a box," she murmured. "She kept it hidden under a loose floorboard. We weren't allowed to touch it. I don't know what was inside." She hesitated. When she left, I checked. It was empty. Adrian's gaze narrowed, not in suspicion of Emily, but at a larger, invisible puzzle. Do you have anything of hers? A letter. A photograph. Emily reached into the pocket of her faded dress and pulled out a folded scrap, worn thin from being opened and closed. Only this. She smoothed it carefully on the bedside table. It was a fragment of a photograph, half of a smiling woman with bright eyes, hair blown by wind. Her mother. The other half torn away, hinted at a man's shoulder and a hand on her mother's back. Adrian moved closer. He didn't touch the picture. His eyes settled on the corner where a date was stamped in faint ink, and on the background, an old pier with peeling white rails and gulls frozen mid-flight. For a heartbeat, the room fell away from him. He stood on that pier again, younger, believing in summer and in promises that felt too big for a single lifetime. He steadied himself. Where did you get this? It was in the wall, Emily said. It's all I have. May I? He asked, and when she nodded, he lifted the fragment with a care that surprised her. He studied it, then folded it with reverence and gave it back. Keep it safe. Before Emily could ask why the picture had changed the air around them, the door downstairs opened, hard and loud, like a fist on wood. Heavy footsteps stormed across marble. A voice, sharp as broken glass, sliced up the staircase. Emily. Emily, where are you? The stepmother. Emily flinched. Daniel stirred with a soft whimper. Adrian's jaw tightened again. He walked to the bedroom door, and for a second he stood there, not afraid, not uncertain, but choosing his words like a surgeon choosing a blade. Then he opened it. In the hallway below, a cluster of villagers had spilled into the foyer, led by the stepmother, who wore a smirk that never reached her eyes. There she is, she shouted when she saw Emily in the doorway. You filthy little thief. You stole from my home and ran. And you, her finger stabbed the air toward Adrian. You have no right to keep what's mine. Adrian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. What exactly do you claim is yours? The girl, the woman snapped. And the boy. They live under my roof. Their mother left them to me. I'm the only one who's bothered to keep them breathing. Emily felt the lie like a slap. You starved us, she said, her voice small but steady. You said Daniel wasn't worth saving. Gasps rippled through the villagers, not of pity but of hunger for spectacle. The stepmother threw a theatrical hand to her chest. Listen to her lies. She's turning everyone against me. She took money from my drawer. I took nothing, Emily said, shaking, eyes flashing with a courage that had cost her everything. Adrian stepped forward one pace. The foyer, the staircase, the villagers, all seemed to tilt toward him as if drawn by gravity. There will be no more shouting, he said. There will be no threats in this house. The boy is ill and being treated by a physician. If you cared for him, you would have brought him medicine instead of a crowd. The stepmother's eyes darted, then hardened. You think your money can buy you anything, even other people's children. Something in Adrian's expression changed. Less ice, more fire. Money can't buy what was stolen, he said. It can only build what others tried to tear down. He turned to the butler. Mr. Hayes, please escort our guests outside. If they refuse, call the constable. I'll speak to them on the steps. The foyer emptied in a murmuring cluster until only Emily, Daniel, the doctor, and Adrian remained. He faced Emily, and the edge in his voice softened. I won't let them take you back there. Outside on the stone steps, the night wind returned, rustling the trimmed hedges. The stepmother stood at the front of the crowd, sure of her power in numbers. Adrian stood alone against them, which somehow made him look larger. You want them, he said, measured. Prove you deserve them. Bring records of school. Receipts for food. A doctor's note that you tried to treat the boy's fever. He held her gaze. Or admit you neglected them and leave my property immediately. The villagers shifted, eyes flicking from face to face. They'd come for a scene. They'd found a wall. The stepmother's lip curled. Fine. Keep your charity case. See if I care. She'll never be one of you. She spat on the ground and turned, gathering the crowd with a bitter sweep of her arm. Come on. We're not welcome among people who think a beggar is worth gold. They drifted away, steps scuffing stone, murmurs fading into the dark. When Adrian returned upstairs, Emily hadn't moved far. She'd stood the whole time, spine straight despite the storm in her chest. He closed the door gently behind him. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, he said, I did. Something tender and terrifying hovered between them, a truth trying to find its shape. Adrian looked at Daniel, then at Emily, and finally at the fragment of photograph she had tucked back into her pocket like a talisman. Your mother's name, he asked. Was it Lena? Emily's breath caught. Yes. And did she ever mention the sea? A pier with white rails. Gulls so loud you had to shout to be heard. Tears filled Emily's eyes before she understood why. She told me about a summer, she said, voice barely there. About a hope. Adrian closed his eyes once, as if steadying a world that had tilted too far. When he opened them, they shone with a fierce light. I knew your mother, he said. A long time ago. Longer than you've been alive. His hand trembled, almost imperceptibly. I have been looking for her, and for something she took with her when she left. Emily's heart was thunder and birds and a child's prayer answered in the most impossible way. What did she take? Adrian swallowed. My future, he said softly. Then, more clearly, with a certainty that turned the air electric. You. The word landed like a bell in a silent church. Emily didn't understand. Not fully, not yet, but part of her did, the part that had recognized his eyes the moment he stepped from the shadows of the square. Adrian took a step closer, careful not to break the thread connecting them. Emily, he said, and her name in his voice sounded like it belonged there. I believe I'm your father. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. Daniel exhaled in his sleep, peaceful for the first time in days. And the girl who had begged for medicine in a world that had only given her insults felt the floor steady under her feet, because everything was about to change. Emily froze at Adrian's words. I believe I'm your father. The phrase echoed inside her chest, louder than the ticking of the clock, louder than the storm of doubts that rushed in all at once. Could it be true? Could this man, the one who had carried Daniel like he mattered, who had stood against the stepmother's cruelty, truly be her father? Her lips trembled. My father. Adrian nodded slowly, his eyes softening. I should have found you long ago. I didn't know where your mother went. When she left. He paused as if the memory still carved a wound inside him. I thought I had lost everything. But now I see she left me something more precious than I ever deserved. Emily wanted to believe him. She wanted it with every aching part of her. But before she could speak, voices rose again from outside. Angry, persistent voices. The stepmother had not left quietly. She had rallied a group of villagers, and this time she came with more than insults. She came with accusations. Open this door, the stepmother bellowed. You think you can steal children from me? The law will hear of this. Emily flinched at the sound, instinctively pulling Daniel closer. Adrian turned toward the door, his expression hardening into something almost regal. Stay here, he told Emily. Don't be afraid. Downstairs, the front doors shook under pounding fists. Adrian descended the staircase with measured steps, each one echoing across marble like a drumbeat. The butler opened the door halfway, only for the stepmother to push against it, her face twisted with rage. You have no right, she spat. That girl belongs to me. Her mother abandoned her in my care. She's mine to raise, or to discipline. And the boy too. Adrian's gaze was icy. You call what you've done raising? She owes me. The woman screamed. Do you know how much food I wasted on her? How many nights I fed her scraps so she wouldn't starve? And the boy useless. Always sick, always crying. Do you think I should suffer because their mother was weak? Gasps rippled through the villagers gathered behind her. Some looked uncertain now, eyes darting between the stepmother's venom and Adrian's steady presence. Adrian spoke, calm but deadly sharp. You fed them scraps and called it kindness. You denied a feverish child medicine and called it discipline. You mocked a desperate girl in the street and called it your right. That is not guardianship. That is cruelty. The stepmother sneered, but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. You think you can parade your wealth and silence me? Money doesn't change the law. No, Adrian said firmly. But truth does. He lifted a hand, and the butler stepped forward carrying a leather folder. Inside were documents Adrian had ordered prepared the moment the doctor confirmed Daniel's condition. Medical notes, statements from servants, even signed witness accounts from villagers who had seen Emily begging at doors. He handed them to the constable who had arrived among the crowd, drawn by the commotion. The constable skimmed the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. Finally, he looked up at the stepmother. These are serious claims, he said. Neglect. Abuse. Abandonment. If half of this is true, you'll face charges. The stepmother paled. Lies, she shouted. All lies. That girl is clever. She spun tales to make me look like a monster. Her words faltered when Emily appeared at the top of the staircase, Daniel weak but awake in her arms. The boy's voice, hoarse but clear, broke through the chaos. She heard us. The crowd hushed. Every eye turned to the frail child whose truth carried more weight than the stepmother's shrieking. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her body. I begged for medicine. She laughed at me. She said he should die. Whispers spread through the villagers. Doubt turned into shame, and shame into quiet condemnation. The stepmother looked around, realizing her power was slipping away. Adrian walked to the base of the stairs and looked up at Emily, pride and fury burning in his eyes. You are not hers, he said clearly so that all could hear. You never were. You are my daughter, and I will not allow another moment of your life to be stolen by cruelty. The constable closed the folder. Until this is resolved, the children remain here, under Mr. Cole's care. If the woman contests it, she'll do so in court, not by storming doors. The stepmother's face twisted, her final weapon slipping from her grasp. Fine, she hissed. Keep your little beggars. They'll ruin you just as they ruined their mother. Adrian's eyes flared. The only ruin here is the heart of someone who mocks the innocent. Get off my property. The constable motioned, and the crowd dispersed slowly. Some left with heads lowered, others with a newfound respect for the man who had stood against cruelty without raising his voice. The stepmother cursed under her breath, but her protests grew weaker as she was escorted away. Silence returned. The night air was crisp, stars glinting faintly above. Adrian exhaled, long and heavy, before climbing the stairs back to Emily and Daniel. Emily's eyes were wide, her small shoulders trembling. Is it over? She asked. For now, Adrian said gently. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand steady and protective. She won't hurt you again. I promise. Emily swallowed hard, searching his face for cracks, for any sign that this might be another dream ready to collapse. But all she saw was certainty, the kind she had never known in her short, bruised life. Daniel nestled against her chest, his fever breaking fully now, his breaths deep and even. Emily kissed his forehead, whispering, We're safe, Danny. We're finally safe. Adrian's gaze lingered on them both, and though he didn't say it aloud, one truth settled into the room. They weren't just safe, they were home. Morning crept into the room like a shy guest, touching the curtains with a pale glow. Emily woke to the soft hush of Daniel's breathing. Steady, warm, peaceful. For a second, she didn't remember where she was. Then the scent of mint tea, the weight of a thick blanket, the memory of a man standing like a shield between her and the world returned all at once. Adrian. He was there now, by the window, his voice low as he spoke with Dr. Hargrove. Keep monitoring. Hydration, light meals. We'll run proper tests this afternoon. Make sure the fever has no hidden fangs. The doctor nodded, smiled at Emily, and slipped out. Adrian turned, and the morning light caught the tired relief in his eyes. How's our little fighter? Emily brushed a curl from Daniel's forehead. Cool. He slept. She swallowed, a small smile tugging at her lips. He dreamed without crying. Adrian's shoulders loosened, as if the room itself had exhaled. He walked closer but stopped with a care that honored the fragile miracle before him. When you're ready, he said, I'd like to show you something. Downstairs, the house felt different in daylight. Less grand, more alive. Past the foyer, past a sunlit corridor, Adrian opened a door to a study lined with floor-to-ceiling shelves. On the desk lay an old, worn box. Not large. Not heavy. The kind of box that exists to guard a single thread of a life that might otherwise break. Adrian paused before opening it. Your mother, Lena, she was brilliant. Wild in the best ways. She taught me to hear music in places most people heard only noise. He smiled, not with his mouth, but with a memory. We were young. Too sure. We promised forever, and then the world grew teeth. We lost each other in the chaos. He lifted the lid. Inside lay a photograph, whole, not torn, a pier with white rails and gulls stalled mid-flight. And two people in the center, leaning into the wind. Young Adrian and Lena, eyes laughing. Emily's breath caught. She reached out, then stopped, as if touching the picture might spill its light. She told me about the sea, she whispered. About a summer that sounded like a song. Adrian turned the photograph over. On the back, faded ink. For the life we're brave enough to hold. L. Under the picture, a folded page. Music bars in Lena's handwriting. Notes scattered like small birds along a wire. He hummed them, not perfect but true. A lullaby. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Tears rose before she understood why. She didn't just recognize the melody. She knew its pauses, its hush, the way the last note softened as if careful not to wake a sleeping child. She used to hum that to Daniel, Emily said. When the lights went out. When we were afraid. She wrote it when we thought the future was already ours, Adrian murmured. I never stopped hearing it. Silence held them together. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that lets two hearts learn how to share a room. He closed the box with the gentleness of someone thanking the past for guiding the present, then faced Emily fully. We can do a DNA test. Lawyers, signatures, whatever the path demands. But I want to ask you something that doesn't need paper to be true. He knelt, this man whose steps had made crowds fall quiet, so his eyes met hers without height between them. Emily, will you let me be your father? The world did not burst into fireworks. It didn't have to. It simply settled. Emily's yes began as a tremor in her chest, moved to her lips, and became a word that changed the shape of the room. Yes. Adrian did not rush forward. He held out his hands. Emily stepped into them, into a hug that was careful and fierce at once, like shelter learned how to have arms. For a long moment there were no sentences, only the proof that a promise made on a windswept pier can find its way back through years that tried to swallow it. Footsteps padded at the doorway. Daniel, propped against the maid's side, blinked in the light, hair mussed, eyes clearer than they'd been in days. Eiley. She ran to him, knelt, kissed his forehead. You're safe, she said. We're safe. Adrian crouched beside them. Daniel studied his face with the blunt seriousness of the very young. Are you a nice? Adrian nodded solemnly. I am learning to be. Can you make the bad lady go away? Yes, he said and meant it. Can you make pancakes? Adrian blinked. I can hire the best in the city. Daniel considered this, then nodded gravely. Okay. They laughed. Quiet, shaky, disbelieving laughter, the kind that comes when terror loosens its grip and leaves fingerprints that will fade in time. Later, in the kitchen, sunlight pooled on the long table. A chef in a white jacket appeared, bewildered and thrilled by the emergency request. He made pancakes. He made too many. Adrian cut one clumsily, as if it were a delicate document that might explode. Syrup ran down the sides like a small, edible river. Daniel watched, transfixed, then ate with a concentration that made everyone else's eyes sting. Between bites, Emily's gaze kept drifting, to the window, to the garden beyond, to a future that felt not like a rumor but like a road. School. Shoes that fit. A room where rain was a sound, not a leak. A lullaby sung without fear of who might hear. There were practicalities, of course. The constable's report. Custody filings. The stepmother already howling into whatever ears she could find. But a door can shout all it likes. It stays closed when a stronger lock has been set. Adrian's lawyers moved like quiet storms. Paper, witnesses, medical records. The village's sharpest tongue finally forced to hold still in the face of truth. By afternoon, an interim order placed Emily and Daniel under Adrian's care. The rest would follow like a line of dominoes finally tipping the right direction. When evening returned, the house gathered them to itself. Adrian showed Emily a room that had never found its person. Until now. The walls were soft blue. The bed was too big in the way that felt like possibility, not emptiness. On the desk, a new notebook, a pencil waiting. In the corner, a small shelf that would need time to learn her favorite stories. "If you don't like the color," he said hurriedly, "we'll." "It's perfect," Emily said, and meant it, because perfection is not a shade. It's a place that doesn't ask you to be smaller. Daniel's room next door glowed with warm lamplight. On the nightstand, a glass of water. On the pillow, a tiny stuffed wolf the maid swore had just appeared. Daniel clutched it with the seriousness heroes reserve for swords. "Before bed," Adrian said, lingering in the doorway as if afraid to break the spell, "your mother used to do something." He cleared his throat. "Would you allow me?" They nodded. He sat on the edge of Daniel's bed. The lullaby rose, hesitant at first, then sure, the notes landing exactly where the room needed them. Emily closed her eyes. Daniel's did too. Halfway through, Emily's voice joined, thin but brave, weaving itself into the melody her life had learned before it learned words. Adrian faltered, smiling, then found his line again. When it ended, no one spoke for a long time. Peace is loud when you've lived too long without it. At the door, Adrian turned back. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll buy shoes. And books. And, if you like, paint for the walls. We'll visit the clinic. Make sure Daniel's health is guarded like a treasure. We'll find a school that sees you, not just your name. We'll..." He stopped, because promises are easy to make and hard to wear well. "We'll go slow. But we'll go together." Emily nodded. Together. He reached for the switch. Darkness settled softly. The hall light drew a thin line across the floor, like a bookmark saving the best chapter for morning. Adrian hesitated, then left the door slightly ajar, because some doors should never be asked to close all the way again. Back in the study, he opened the old box once more. He traced the photograph's edge, then slipped a fresh picture beside it. 3 faces in a kitchen too big for 3, pancakes piled like a dare. He didn't write anything on the back. Some captions live better in the quiet between heartbeats. Upstairs, near sleep carried Emily like a slow river. She thought of doors that open, of lullabies that finish where they began, of a man whose yes had arrived long after it was spoken. She thought of the village, too, the ones who laughed, the ones who looked away, and of the ones whose eyes had softened when a boy whispered she heard us. Maybe even a village can learn. And just before sleep took her, she realized what a home sounds like. Not walls. Not locks. Not chandeliers. A home sounds like the breath of someone who promised to stay. And did. If this story warmed your heart, even a little, help it reach someone who needs hope tonight. Like, subscribe to Christspire, and share this video with a friend. Tell us in the comments, what part hit you the hardest, and why? Your voice keeps these stories alive, and helps more Emilys and Daniels find their way home.